My name is Elizabeth Adams, and I'd like to welcome all of you who have chosen to join me today on my third installment in my three-part series on childhood obesity. It's entitled Who Done It? Finding the Culprit Behind Childhood Obesity. Today we'll be discussing a very controversial and passionate debate surrounding this widespread epidemic that has taken over the health of our nation's children. So how many of you find all of your efforts to encourage healthy, nutritious food choices for your children constantly being undermined by the overwhelming number of television ads that are notoriously promoting unhealthy food choices for your kids? Yeah. And so although we are often bombarded with all this nutrition and health information about what is best or what's right to feed our children, navigating the mixed messages between what health officials put out and what these food marketing companies are saying can be oftentimes overwhelming and quite confusing. So I ask all of you, at what point do we stop blaming ourselves and realize that perhaps maybe we are dealing with extraneous forces, maybe much larger and more powerful than ourselves? And when do we, if at all, start asking and demanding our government and the food marketing companies to start taking responsibility and hold them accountable for these things? So for the next few minutes, I'm going to attempt to try and answer some of these questions. So to begin, 17% or 12.5 million. These statistics are representing the number of children and adolescents aged 2 to 19 years old who are classified as obese. And remember, this is either being 95 in the 95th percentile for the BMI for age growth chart for children, or they're having, for adolescents, a BMI of 30 or more. And 1 out of 3. This statistic represents the number of children that are obese or overweight before their 5th birthday. That seems staggering to me. And 1 out of 3 also represents the number of children that are at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. This was a chronic disease that was once only thought to afflict adults, and now we're seeing more and more that it's occurring in our children. Because of these alarming rates of obesity amongst our youth, it's predicted today that our children will be the first generation of Americans that are projected to have a shorter lifespan than their parents. And to me, that's very sad, and it's definitely a step in the wrong direction. As I pointed out in, I think it was the first workshop we had, these are some of the adverse health effects that can occur because of childhood obesity. We have hypertension, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, bone and joint issues, as well as sleep apnea, poor self-esteem, depression, heart disease, stroke, osteoarthritis, and even cancer. So in terms of marketing to children, studies have been showing that marketing to kids does affect their food choices, their food preferences, and their overall diet. And this often leads to an increased consumption of types of foods that tend to contribute to chronic disease, so unhealthy food choices. Studies also show, when looking at marketing to television or marketing to children, that when kids, the more TV that children watch, this often means they're more likely to be eating in front of the TV, and the more likely they are to be eating in front of the TV, the more likely they are to eat those foods being advertised to them. And as previously mentioned, those foods that are advertised to them are typically not the healthiest choices, and this can lead to chronic disease development. Despite this, $1.5 billion annually is spent on marketing foods to children. And as a result, the interagency work group was developed by Congress. This was created to attempt to improve the overall nutritional profile of foods marketed to children. And this interagency includes the FDA, the CDC, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as well as the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. So recently, the IWG was asked to present their findings, what they've sort of come across when it comes to those types of foods being marketed to kids. They were asked to present this to Congress recently. And well, a debate basically broke out, and I have a clip of that debate, and it's actually from a 4-part HBO documentary film that explored the obesity epidemic. It was called The Weight of the Nation. Specifically, I'm going to be showing you the part 3, which was titled Children in Crisis. And just kind of take a look at those note cards and reflect on what your response might be to some of those quotes. Some of those quotes are what's going to be talked about here.
Once they came out as a draft standard, you saw how much pushback there was from the food companies. Then I realized what a really good idea it was.
The subcommittees will come to order. I'm pleased today to be holding a joint hearing on such an important issue.
Clearly, the IWG's initial proposal went way too far. Frankly, we'd like to find out what you have been cooking up in the kitchen. Right now, I'm not sure. I like the smell of it. Mr. Vladeck, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I'm David Vladeck, Director of the Federal Trade Commission's Bureau of Consumer Protection. Parents don't have an easy task when it comes to getting their kids to eat healthier foods. The FTC is committed to working with its sister agencies and all stakeholders to make that burden on parents less daunting.
Before coming to CDC, I was a professor of pediatrics at Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston, and I'm a prior president of the Obesity Society and prior president of the American Society for Clinical Nutrition. The more television a child watches, the more likely they are to consume foods while watching television, and those foods are more likely to be the foods that are advertised on television.
We don't need the federal government dictating which foods can be marketed to children.
The government should stop pretending after all these decades that it has the answers, because it does not.
So rather than being attacked for a government intrusion or other such nonsense, we should be saying thank you, because I think your report helps all of us as parents and all of us as a country.
I am Dan Jaffe, Executive Vice President of the Association of National Advertisers. The IWG, in effect, is attempting to re-engineer the American diet by declaring war on many healthy products. These guidelines need to be formally withdrawn and returned to the drawing board.
The food manufacturers and advertisers are not going to change what has been working for them, because what has been working for them is adding to their profits.
The overwhelming majority of products marketed to children are still of poor nutritional value. Industry doesn't even want a compromise. They want Congress to step in and kill the interagency work group.
We think that this is a very radical proposal. We don't think that that's hype. We just think that's the fact.
They were so unhappy to have a strong set of nutrition standards proposed by these federal agencies, because they want to look like they're limiting junk food marketing without really having to do it.
The IWG should completely withdraw these recommendations and do what they were instructed to do by Congress: conduct a study and report the findings to Congress.
Okay, so what did you guys think, just kind of generally? We'll get into the quotes in a bit, but just to get sort of an idea of what you guys thought of the video. Anyone have any initial comments or?
I think what we saw is the very reason why there's been nothing done, because everybody has their hand in it, everyone has an opinion, and it just doesn't get anywhere.
So many special interests. Yeah, it's big. A lot of money. Okay, so going into, you all have those note cards in front of you, and they're just some quotes. I think one of them wasn't exactly from this clip. It's actually from a Dateline interview that I pulled, and we'll get to that. It's a very controversial statement. So, who has the first quote? This reads, "We don't need the federal government to dictate to us what foods can be marketed to children." You had it?
Yeah, we have it.
So what did you guys think? Do you think that the government should be involved in controlling?
I think it should be involved because obviously if we don't take a stand on it, as you said, those companies are going to take advantage of it, and if we don't stop, they're going to just continue to do what they're doing right now.
Right. And do you guys think, whoever else had this, do you guys think that it is the government's responsibility to protect those that can't really protect themselves and don't really have a voice, like kids? I don't know who else had it. What do you think?
Yeah, I do, because all like kids don't really know what's good for them or anything like that. So I think they should be protecting like people and kids.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. That's how I feel too. Okay, so the second quote: "The food manufacturers and advertisers are not going to change what's working for them because what's working for them is adding to profits." So that's who had this quote? Okay, what did you guys think? Do you think that they should be risking losing profits because it's just an ethical, something they need to consider since it's an ethical consideration?
I think they're always going to have profits. I think they just want more.
So agree.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with this quote. They're just looking at the bottom line.
Yeah. Okay, and the third one, which wasn't exactly from this clip, but this was from Dateline NBC. "I think junk food and perhaps even other foods are the next tobacco." Who had this? What do you guys think?
I kind of agree, because I think that, I mean, they could still have junk food being marketed, but it's definitely like the way that they're targeting kids really makes it kind of cross the line.
Right. Okay. Excellent points. Thank you all for being open about that. Quick quiz. So how does food marketing to children affect their overall food choices? Anyone? Does it influence them in a positive way?
It can influence both, positive and negative, depending on what they're trying to advertise, if it's like carrots and stuff. But if you've seen like even the carrot or the vegetable commercials, they advertise like the ranch, like, that could be in itself unhealthy.
Right.
Like they'll try to mix in some good stuff with some bad stuff.
Right. How about number 2? What type of foods are typically marketed to children and how does this affect their health? Are they typically healthy foods?
Unhealthy.
Yeah. And is food marketed to children ethical? Why or why not?
No, because they're obviously counting their own decisions.
Perfect. All right, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you've learned something about the dangerous effects of marketing to children when it comes to their health. And thanks for being such a great audience. Any questions? Thank you.